conditioner from Revlon. Beautiful.
Hitachi introduces a microwave
A7.
that's as easy to use as a toaster.
A2.
Now, with the push of a button, you can cook anything you want, just the way you want it. The new Hitachi microwave. It makes even a roast as easy as toast.
A6.
See it at West Broadway TV in stereo, 2846 West Broadway, Vancouver. Hitachi authorized service.
Come on in and see your dream carpets.
Dream Carpets is a huge warehouse full of carpeting in every style and color imaginable.
Selection is just a part of our story. What we're most proud of is our low, low prices.
How would you rate Dream Carpets?
Well, I think the selection is just great and the prices are low.
On sale now at Dream Carpets, Burlington Antron Plus Nylon, $25.95 a square yard, completely installed.
Dream Carpet, 815 Terminal Avenue, where builders buy.
Porter just bought a computer to solve his problems. Instead, it multiplied them because he didn't buy it from Computerland. At Computerland, you'll find the most respected computer systems in the business, featuring Apple, IBM, and Compaq, plus the works free. A 10-point package that guarantees you'll get the right computer for your needs. Available exclusively at Computerland. Computerland. There's only one number one.
Good morning. I've got friends who made hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on a gold stock on the Vancouver market, Carolin Mines. It went from a dime to $60. It's now back down to $2.55. And here's a look at Carolin Gold Mines in the snow, 22 miles east of Hope in the Coquihalla. The mine was closed down in October and the 100 or so union employees laid off. Carolin Gold Mines hopes to refinance, and I hope they refinance too, because a number of people have still not yet been paid from the operation. And we're going to explore the particular problems of a man called Bob Naismyth. Where are you, Bob? Who was the electrical superintendent of the mines for 3 years. He was a man who's going to tell you that he and others were told to work for nothing or else. And while some other of the unpaid employees have been given money last week, he has not been paid any of the money owed to him by Carolin Mines. This is a demonstration of the kind of economic hiccups which hurt people. I hope that Carolin Mines gets open again and makes fortunes, but that's not the point we're after this morning. Also on the program today, we're going to speak to a very outspoken doctor from Williams Lake, and I suspect his equally outspoken wife. This is Dr. Dale Loewen and his wife Angela. He's the guy who used to be the health director for 6 years in the Cariboo Health Unit, and he was fired. And he was fired because he speaks his mind as an anti-abortion doctor. We'll find out what's happening to him. Later in the program, too, we're going to take a look at one side of the story on sport fishing. As you know, the United States and Canada, after goodness knows how many years, are about to ratify a treaty. And the commercial interests in sport fishing, who love to see these kind of pictures, are going to tell you that there's a good chance that this $150 million sport fishing industry is going to be wiped out in the coastal waters and the Gulf waters in British Columbia. And the two men we'll be talking to will be Dan Sewell of Sewell's Marina and Rolf Paterson of Daiwa, the fishing gear people. And the first topic on the griddle this morning is Dr. Dale Loewen from Williams Lake after the break. The last thing I want to do this morning is get involved in one of these hysterical free-for-alls for and against abortion. My own position happens to be, I might as well say it up front, that I am, quote, against abortion as a method of birth control, but I am in favor of abortion in certain circumstances, and nobody will ever change my views on that. What we're going to look at this morning in the case of Dr. Dale Loewen, former health director at Williams Lake, is a claim that he makes, which may well be sound, that he is being unfairly treated and discriminated against. He was, how long were you community health officer up at Williams Lake?
I was in Williams Lake for 6 years. I was with the government for 8 years.
So you were a government-appointed health director at Cariboo Memorial Hospital?
That's correct.
And for the town and area of Williams Lake?
That's correct.
What happened?
They fired me because of my public stance on abortion. What happened was in the fall of 1983, the Cariboo Union Board of Health approved my annual report in October of 1983. They fully approved my report. And I would like to read a small excerpt from the annual report of 1983. The best example of arbitrary situational ethics and the greatest disgrace of all time to the so-called health-caring system is that we continue to murder up to 2 million people per year in North America by aborting their life from the womb. This is an immense contradiction which has grave consequences in society. The individual and society will never be truly healthy as long as we continue to substitute the deceitful philosophy of secular humanism for the consensus of Judeo-Christianity, which is our root. It is self-defeating. Now, this report...
just a minute. Let me take the report.
Okay.
You said in this report, continue to murder 2 million people per year in North America by aborting their life from the womb. That is a statement calculated to make people like myself absolutely foam at the mouth, is it not?
Statement of truth.
Maybe it's your version of the truth. It's not my version.
No, it's not my version of the truth.
I say it's your version of the truth. I say my version of the truth is better. But don't let's get into that. Okay. Are you making a case that because this was printed by the Province of British Columbia Ministry of Health, right. Cariboo Health Unit, Annual Report 1983, that they have accepted and endorsed your principles?
Exactly.
Wrong. It was too much trouble to take it out and would have caused too much trouble at the time.
It would have been very simple for them to take it out.
Does the government of the Province of British Columbia follow the criminal code on the face of it for abortions?
The government of British Columbia?
Yeah, through its hospital system.
The doctors don't follow the criminal code.
Is there a therapeutic abortion committee at Cariboo Hospital, Williams Lake?
Yes.
Right. And that operates?
To a degree, to a point.
Abortions are done?
Abortions are done.
Did you take any part in that therapeutic health committee, that therapeutic abortion committee?
No, I tried to several years ago. In fact, somebody put me up as an appointee to the board, but they turned me down.
I'm not surprised they turned you down.
I've been on an abortion committee before.
You were not on the abortion committee there?
Not there.
But you continued to speak strongly against abortion in this extravagant language?
Yes, I speak strongly against abortion.
Fair enough. What happened to you? Were you told why you were fired?
No.
As health director?
No, I wasn't told why I was fired.
Did you ever find out why you were fired?
Yes, I did find out. The way I found out was that I applied for hospital privileges to go back into practice. And of course, I just met with more of the same because my protest had been directed against the people who would have to give me privileges.
Now I'm coming into your side.
Yes, yes.
You're fired from your government job, which paid what, $70,000 a year?
A little less, but around that.
A little less, roughly speaking, $70,000 a year. And then you stay in Williams Lake as a GP.
Yes.
For which you are eminently qualified.
Yes.
How many years have you been?
8 years of experience, plus another year, almost 9 years of experience now.
Right, as an experienced doctor. And you said, please, I'm no longer health director. I want to practice in Williams Lake and its environs, and I want to be able to use the hospital. And they said? They
said that my speaking out on abortion showed a lack of professional respect. A lack of professional respect.
So you are still...
peaceful speaking out against abortion.
Extravagant, but peaceful, right?
Peaceful, absolutely peaceful. Letters to the paper, letters to journals, peaceful demonstration.
And did you take, are you a member of pro-life?
No.
Did you take part in parades in Williams Lake?
Yes, we did on our own, yes.
Did you help to carry the banners?
We certainly did. You have the pictures there.
What did the banners say?
In a sense, they said, live and let live. The silent Holocaust, abortion, the silent Holocaust, they're right on there. But there was
Please stop abortion. Jesus watches all we do.
That's right, Jack.
Have a live.
Have a heart.
Have a
heart and let live.
Yes.
There was always a balance, Jack, between tough and tender. We weren't pointing in judgment. We were saying there are alternatives. Let's look at them.
And you did not, you've never carried out any abortions, of course.
Way back, yes.
You changed your mind on it.
Definitely.
But the fact was that who turned you down? The medical?
Well, what happened when the board turned me
When
down?
you asked for privileges?
When I asked for privileges, there was a split decision amongst the doctors. I should mention that. That the medical staff voted and the decision was split. There was something like 40% didn't vote against me. And following this, of course the board ratified that. Following this, I went to the Medical Appeal Board of the Ministry of Health to appeal this decision.
Right.
And the appeal board basically upheld the decision. But the interesting thing about the appeal board was that they dragged my personnel file over from Victoria, which I'd never seen. I'd never had a chance to defend myself. And I saw this thing for the first time. Actually, some of it made me laugh because it was full of inaccuracies and so on. But anyway, what the interesting thing about the appeal board is that in their judgment on looking at the Ministry of Health situation as medical health officer, and I'll read from the report, this board finds no evidence of medical incompetence in regard to Loewen's tenure of office at the health unit, but finds that there was sufficient concern by the ministry engendered by Loewen's outside activities, which are described on the next page as my abortion demonstration, and the disruptive effect on the staff to have caused the ministry to terminate his employment in March 1984. So there is a statement of fact in an illegal document which says that the government fired me because of my stand on abortion.
But
And that
finds
is-
that there was sufficient concern by the ministry engendered by your outside activities, that's your abortion
Yes,
picketing, and disruptive effect on your staff. Did it have a disruptive effect on your staff?
Only on very few. Even
Were there screaming matches between
No.
you and your
Never.
staff?
No, there were no
Never.
screaming matches.
Never.
There
No
were,
screaming
There were a
matches.
few staff who did not respect my right of free speech. There were some staff who are in favor of abortion but said, you have the right to speak what you
Oh, I'm inclined to believe that too, providing it doesn't cause riots
It doesn't.
Didn't cause
within the
riots.
hospital. And I have a letter here from a legal firm in Victoria saying, authorized by the Ministry of Health to confirm that it does not reflect upon your medical competence.
Not at all.
That's right.
Nothing else?
Nothing else.
Straight.
No fist fights?
No.
Nothing.
No
We
fist fight.
contacted
Came from the
the
other
Cariboo Memorial Regional District Hospital this morning. We were told by Barbara Chapman, I asked her if she wanted to speak on the program by phone. We never discuss anything to do with personnel or staff. I would hope no one in any position of authority would either. Our position remains unchanged on this matter and we have nothing further to say. The hospital contends, this is in a separate piece of research, that Loewen's demonstrations showed a lack of professional respect and his presence at the hospital would be a disruptive influence. Some truth in that.
It's nonsense.
Nonsense.
I was on the courtesy staff at that hospital for 6 years.
Nonsense.
It is nonsense.
It is
Jack.
nonsense.
Straight nonsense. It's a human rights issue and nothing
The
further.
question is, has he been discriminated against?
Yes.
On the face of it would seem to be a bit, unless there was some real argy-bargies, there's no reason why he shouldn't have hospital privileges to look after patients in the hospital.
No
Correct?
reason at all. I'm
Are we
fully-
agreed on that?
Yes.
Yes.
Let's see what listeners think about it after the break. Where am I going? Hold on. You want that one first? Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm a registered nurse in Vancouver,
Right?
and I just wanted to say that it's about time that some doctors started to take some stands like that, and that more doctors should be doing this sort of thing.
Ma'am, the question I asked you was, is he being discriminated? I'm not going into the abortion caper. Is he being discriminated against because, should he be given hospital privilege at Cariboo Memorial Hospital? That's the point. Should he be?
Of course he should.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Not if he disrupts the staff to the point where it causes disharmony amongst them.
Not if he disrupts the staff. Let's ask you, do you want to make any points in that?
I never did disrupt the staff.
Well, they may not have told
They
you.
disrupted themselves. But when I spoke out against abortion, I spoke out against abortion. I did it peacefully. I didn't go and collar them and grab them by the cuff and say, listen, you turkeys.
Did you do it around the hospital?
No. Oh, yeah, we walked around the hospital, outside, but not in the
hospital.
No,
while on your official duty.
Not in the building.
Private time, private time.
Private time.
Always private time.
I wrote them letters at times, but...
Any other point you want to make, caller? Where are you?
Hello. I'd like to ask you a question, if I may.
Right.
When you had a 15-year-old daughter, and she was raped by a couple of the scungiest-looking rubs done on Skid Row, do anything to change your point on abortion? I think it's a woman's right. It's her body. It is her right to choose.
I want to avoid this, but that's one question I'll let you away with.
May I answer that?
You may answer that question.
Sir, two wrongs don't make a right, pardon me. And I think the big problem is that there aren't enough people that come out and help this girl who's been raped. There's not enough counseling. There's not enough taking this girl in, looking after her. And I still don't think that the father's crime justifies us killing the innocent baby.
You would let, I didn't want to get into this, you would let a 12-year-old girl go to full term and deliver a baby conceived in her womb by, as my fella said, a scungy, mentally defective rapist.
Yes, I would. Yes, I would.
And so would you.
Yes, I would, providing you were absolutely sure that the girl wasn't going to die.
That's right.
Well,
she had some serious defect where the pregnancy would likely to kill both of them.
Or if an amniocentesis showed a defect.
No, that's different.
Not to mention...
After a rape case.
The defect in the baby?
Yeah.
No.
Jack, the trauma that a girl goes through in a case like this is so high that the statistics of this occurring are very, very low.
Who takes a baby?
Very low. Jack, it takes between 5 and 7 years to adopt a child now because so many of them are being thrown in incinerators. There are many loving parents who will take that child.
I want to make one point here.
Many.
Less than 3% of pregnancies result from rape, incest. Rape and incest. And it's always the classical thing that's brought up.
Yeah, sure.
Let's suppose we seceded to your point, which we don't. What about the other 97+%, the 1.5 million, 2 million that are being killed?
Well, I've told you my position.
Anyway,
go ahead from Penticton.
Yes, I wanted to say, first of all, that I agree that this man is being persecuted by his fellow doctors, and I think that they are the ones that are showing a lack of professionalism. And, you know, in this issue of, you know, a person being aborted because of a rape, I think it's absolutely ludicrous. You probably all know the great black gospel singer Ethel Waters. She herself was a product of a rape when her mother was 13 years old.
Okay, but you make another very good point, which is that when you applied for hospital privileges, even if you had been disruptive in somebody's mind, you should have been given the privileges and a clean slate.
Absolutely.
To see if you thereafter would...
Probation.
There is a 1-year probation period. You're on associate staff for 1 year, and I drove this point home several times. Look, I'll be under probation anyway.
That's right.
And they wouldn't go for it?
They wouldn't go for it.
Well, I think on the
Too
face
much local autonomy, Jack.
You can't have too much local autonomy.
Oh, yes, you can.
Who should run it?
Not a few on the top. It's a taxpayer's
should
hospital.
leave the licensing of physicians up to the Royal College.
That's right.
And I'm licensed by the Royal College to practice medicine, surgery, and obstetrics.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Go ahead from Vernon.
Thank you.
Well, I think that the hospital itself should have allowed this doctor to practice, but I also think that...
Go on.
I also think that, in fact, that maybe when you have a $70,000 job and you do work for the government and you're not supposed to speak out on these issues, that you shouldn't. I work for a company that only pays $25,000, and they have rules and laws that we're supposed to abide by, and I don't say anything against them. It's just common practice.
Well, no, I'm not complaining about him being fired as a health director. You are. But, I mean, even though you were fired as health director because of your divisive potential, we'll say, it's a question of you applying for hospital privileges, which hurts me. I mean, that would seem to be a straight denial of your rights as a citizen of British Columbia.
Yes.
Until you had proven that you weren't worthy of the privileges, right?
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hi. I'd just like to congratulate the doctor for stepping forward. But I think the root of this thing is a lot deeper. I think the left-wingers, and this is a left versus right, that the left-wingers have themselves into key positions, and freedom of speech to them is only when they want freedom of speech.
Absolutely.
You accusing me of that too?
No, you were bringing things out into the open, Jack.
That's
yeah, right. But you see, I'm deadly against their archaic views on their cruel views on abortion.
But you're giving us a fair chance, Jack.
Oh, yeah, well, fairly fair. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes.
I'd just like to say that I fully agree with the doctor's views.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. And that I am from Williams Lake and presently reside in Vancouver.
Uh-huh.
And that in May of '79, I was involved in a motor vehicle accident on Chimney Lake Road.
And I think you've got your television sound up because you're driving me around the bend. Are you going to tell me that Dr. Loewen attended to you?
I'm just saying, Mr. Webster, that the hospital can utilize anybody's services, such as Mr. Loewen's, and that they're in need of staff in Williams Lake.
Uh-huh. And he should get his privileges. Thank you. I'll be back with more calls after the break. I want to be scrupulously fair to the Loewens from Williams Lake. He was the health director in the Cariboo Unit. He was fired from that job. The specific reason given was?
They didn't give a reason. But the reason came out in the Medical Appeal Board report that they fired me because of my stand on abortion.
Right, fair enough. And then, thereafter, how much time passed between the time you were fired from your $70,000 a year job to the time you applied for hospital privileges?
Approximately 3 months.
You applied for that and you were refused that?
I was refused.
Were reasons given then?
No.
No
the government never opened their mouth.
You are a properly qualified GP who plans to live and work in Williams Lake, all things being equal.
That's right.
And they won't let you use the hospital facilities which are essential for your healthy practice.
That's it.
That's right.
You wanted to read something to me.
I just wanted to make one point about the social credit government of British Columbia. At the appeal board, the witness for the government stated that the ministry takes a neutral stand on abortion. This is not true at all. The ministry is pro-abortion, and that's the reason they fired me. I'd like you to read something from the social credit creed, which I think has been buried somewhere. The individual human being is the most important of all God's creation on the earth. Part of God's creation on the earth, in the terms of individuals, are babies within the womb. And this government pays for the 10,000 or so abortions that are done per year.
You're not reading the social credit creed.
Read it.
This is the social credit creed.
Yeah, but
the individual human being is the most important of all God's creation on this earth.
Good.
You are entitled to security with freedom.
Good.
Okay.
Of speech.
We then become to the interpretation of an individual human being in which you and I are poles apart.
No, Jack, science has proven that.
My science proves otherwise. Or my conscience tells me science proves otherwise. You almost lost that point there. Have you any further appeals you can make at all?
Further appeals?
Yeah, to get your privilege. Could you get privileges?
Well, I belong to Canadian Physicians for Life, and through Advocates for Life, they're looking at possible legal alternatives. But
do any other members of the organization, Canadian Physicians for Life, have hospital privileges?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Could you get hospital privileges anywhere else in British Columbia?
Mm-hmm.
Most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely.
Jack, the irony of the situation is that the very hospital that doesn't give Dale his privileges highly recommended him to Stewart in the summer.
I worked in Stewart in the hospital.
Highly
only doctor
him.
in the community.
Well, I'm sure you're a thoroughly competent
totally
doctor.
happy. I tell you, I went to 2 other communities as well who wanted to take me on. So
I'm going to try something here just now. It may not work. I want to know, we've only got 5 or 6 minutes, from as many people as I can in a yes or no. Go on your views on abortion. Is he being unfairly treated by the medical board or the administration of the Cariboo Hospital and the Ministry of Health? I want a yes or no. Which side are you on? I'm just going to go up the line. Pick it up quickly and tell me. Which side are you on?
I don't think he should be given the privileges.
Okay. What do you think?
I think he's being discriminated against.
Thank you. What do you think?
I think he's very unfairly treated.
So do I. What do you think? What do you think?
I don't think he's discriminated against.
You don't think?
No.
Okay. Do you think he's being unfairly treated?
Yes, the doctor has 2 patients, the mother and the child. He's been unfairly discriminated against.
Thank you. Do you think he's being unfairly discriminated on the issue of whether or not he has hospital privileges?
Morning, Jack, and I think yes, he is.
So do I. What do you think?
No, I don't think he's being
Thank you, ma'am. What do you think?
He delivered my 3 children, and I think, yes, he is being discriminated against.
Good. What do you think?
I think he's being discriminated against.
Thank you. Nobody there. What do you think?
No.
Not being discriminated against.
Right.
Okay. What do you think?
Hello?
What do you think, sir?
Jack Webster?
Yes.
Yes, I think he's being discriminated against, and I like his stand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you think he's being discriminated? Yes, you. Wherever you are. Yes, you, ma'am.
Jack, you know better than that. This man is not being discriminated against. He's not being refused privileges because
or
of his
no?
stand on
Yes or no?
abortion.
Thank you. What do you think? What do you think?
He's definitely being discriminated against.
Yeah. What do you think? Come on.
Yes, Jack, I think you're being discriminated against, you know.
Thank you. What do you think?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. What do you think?
He's most certainly being discriminated against.
Thank you. What do you think?
I certainly think he has been discriminated against.
What do you think?
Yes, most definitely. Where do we send the money?
Excuse me, it's a collect call.
I'll accept the charges. I'll accept the charges. And nobody's asking for money. The count at the moment, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 to 5. I'll do a few more. This is quite interesting, isn't it? I'll go from the top this time. What do you think?
I think absolutely he's being discriminated against.
So do I. And you? What do you think?
I think he's got what's coming to him.
Thank you. What do you think?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, very definitely discriminated against.
Thank you. And you?
Yes, he's being discriminated against.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason why they couldn't give you hospital privileges. Nobody challenges your competence. You'd be on a probation period.
That's right.
If you went around walking up and down the operating room carrying
Yep. They could
anti-abortion,
kick me out.
That's
throw
different.
you out your
That's
ear.
different.
That's different. Where was it going? What do you think?
Yes, he is.
Thank you. And you?
He's been discriminated against.
Thank you. And you?
I think that you...
Yes or no?
Go on. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Hello?
Hello, yes or no?
Oh, yes and no. I think his license should be revoked.
You have not been discriminated against. What do you think?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. That's 7. The count now is 20 to 7.
Human rights issue, Jack.
It is a human rights issue. Where's this call from?
Williams Lake.
Okay, you can say a little piece. Where do you stand on it?
I believe that he's being discriminated against because everybody has the right to talk. We just have the right not to listen. And I also believe that we shouldn't have abortion.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I feel that he's being discriminated against.
Thank you, ma'am. What about you?
Hello?
How do you feel, sir?
Yes, I think he's being discriminated against.
And you?
Absolutely, Jack. He's being discriminated against.
And you?
Yes, he's being discriminated against.
Thank you. And you?
Dirty, rotten, sock-red pigs.
What?
He agrees with you.
Oh.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Bloody right he is.
Good. And you?
Definite discrimination. Does he need some help?
No, he's a big
Yeah,
boy.
we can use all the help,
We're
Jack.
struggling.
We want moral
Everybody should
support.
stand up, right?
I'm
And
below
you?
the poverty line now, Jack.
Come on. How do you stand on it? Nobody there. What about you?
Yes.
Yes, okay. We'll leave it there. 28 to 7.
Pretty good.
If the people have grasped the principle that I attempted to enunciate
Yes.
as clearly
That's
as
right.
possible,
That's right.
that there is no reason why you cannot be granted hospital privileges for any hospital in British Columbia based on your admitted competence,
Right.
you are being discriminated against by a count of 28 to 7.
Fourfold.
What's your next step?
Well, I'm waiting for the legal people to come back to me with the legal options. I don't know what they are.
Yeah, that's,
We've considered making dartboards with our faces on it, Jack.
that
Sure to
with
bring
your
something in.
faces.
Yeah, to make a living. Yeah.
Meanwhile, do you plan to stay in Williams Lake as long
Yes,
as
yes.
We're going to struggle through
Fight
this
the
thing.
good fight, run the good race.
Yeah.
And like the ad says, when they come for you, who will be left to stand up to speak out, Jack? Come on, people, get up and speak out. Now's the time.
Not on
Human
the
rights.
abortion
Human
stance,
rights.
on the issue of the fact that he appears to have been discriminated against and
Human rights.
no
that's
proper
right.
reason for
That's right.
not to. As a matter of fact, I doubt if you should have been fired as health officer either, unless you were really divisive.
They really didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah, I know, because you're a troublemaker.
Do you know, I had a meeting with them on January the 19th, and they told me that everything was okay. And 2 months later, they fired me. They really didn't know what to do with me.
I'm glad you came on the program.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Next, we're going to talk to Bob Naismyth, the former employee of Carolin mines. I hope he is again soon, but he can't get his pay despite the fact that there's all kinds of gold in the mine up at Hope. After the break. It's a long time since I've had a citizen on the air about the very ordinary problem of unpaid wages. But this has got a couple of interesting facets to it. Bob Naismyth, the electrical superintendent at Carolin Mines for 3 years, and how long, Bob?
3 years, 2 months.
3 years and 2 months. Phoned me last week about a lack of payment. And I was interested because Carolin Gold Mines was one of these rocketing glamour stocks on the exchange in Vancouver. And as I said earlier, some friends of mine made hundreds of thousands of dollars as the stock rocketed up to $60. That was about the top, wasn't it?
It was about top figure, yeah.
And the Carolin can't be blamed for the stock dropping because the price of gold dropped from $800 an ounce to $300 an ounce.
That's correct, yeah.
But Bob, I want to hear your employment experience and why you haven't been paid your wages by Carolin Mines.
Okay, throughout the 1984, Carolin Mines had difficulty on numerous occasions in meeting the payroll on time. However, towards the end of the year, this became increasingly troublesome in that the employees on staff were finding themselves in a position whereby they were nearly 6 weeks behind with wages. While this was brewing, we also found out that we had lost our dental plan, our medical plan, and we were attending work with no life insurance. We voiced our opinion and our concerns to the management on a couple of occasions, and as this whole thing was taking place, of course, the staff became rather unsettled, and we started to discuss about withdrawing our services. I asked the manager personally, Mr. Matthew, if the staff withdrew their services for non-payment of wages, would there be any repercussions? At that time, he told me, no, there will be none. On the 28th of December, Mr. Matthew called a meeting, and that morning he said, there will be no money today, there will be no money tomorrow, maybe sometime in January. I expect you to continue working, and those who don't will no longer be considered as part of Carolin Mines. My statement was that I would not resign my position, but that I would proceed to the local UIC office in Hope and file a claim for UIC benefits because I could not afford to live without an income. I did this, and within a matter of hours, the assistant manager, Mr. Fred Raleigh, was in town and offered my job to one of my unemployed electricians.
You had been told, given the ultimatum, let me get this right, you work without pay or you lose your job.
We were told, I expect you to continue working, and those who don't will no longer be considered as part of Carolin Mines.
And you said, well, look, I'm not going for that. I'm going down to register for UIC.
Yes.
Because you can't live without your pay.
That's for sure.
And you say that immediately you went down to register for UIC and you didn't go back to work again.
No, my job had already been offered to another person.
Offered to another. How much money are you owed at the moment for how long from Carolin Mines?
Wages and holiday pay, $8,500. I believe I'm also legally entitled to severance pay, which would bring me around $11,000.
Now, when the mine was closed, when, October?
Yeah.
When the union, and they're mostly union miners.
That's correct.
100 and some people.
Something like that, yes.
Did they get their final paychecks and severance pay?
I believe they got their final paycheck, but they never did receive their severance pay.
Didn't get the severance pay. Now, in this period after the meeting at the mine, did a number of people work without pay, knowing they weren't going to get paid? Staff people?
Yes, they worked hoping that they would be paid, but they worked without pay.
How many of them joined you in your little kind of walk-off saying, hey, this isn't cricket, we can't work without pay, we're going to go register for UIC?
There was 5 people involved.
Now, last week the mine officials told me that they'd got some money for payrolls of the staff. Yeah. And I believe monies were paid last week.
That's correct.
About $65,000 worth.
That's correct.
Did you get any of that money?
Not a cent.
Did any of the other people who had refused to work for free get money?
None.
Did the guys who worked for free get some of the back pay?
Yes.
Yeah. So right now, have you been to employment standards?
I have, and I'm rather disappointed in their response. I've heard that they're very slow-moving and have a poor track record in the recovery of wages. And when I talked to the investigator in Chilliwack, who's in charge of the case, he makes statements such as, well, you can't get blood out of a stone, and we don't really want to start a domino effect here and perhaps close the mine down.
Because it is potentially still a very good mine.
Yes, and I hope for the sake of the people in Hope and for the town of Hope that they do get their financing and it becomes a viable operation.
Yeah, they've got 300 ounces of, how do you describe that? Concentrates right now, gold and concentrates right now, which is worth a fair chunk of money, yes. But it hasn't been able to go to Kamenko to the smelter yet.
Apparently, yes.
Now, you've approached the officials and they've got no satisfaction. I'm going to speak to Mr. Orville Gillespie, Carolin Mines, who's been helpful on the telephone. Orville, thanks for cooperating this morning.
No problem, Jack.
I don't know if you heard all of what Bob Naismyth said, but he would seem to have told me an accurate story that you owe him about in excess of $8,500, maybe $11,000. When's he going to get his money?
Well, at the point, Jack, what happened there, as I understand it from the mine now, is that there were 3 walked off of the job, and they were told that as soon as we finish the interim money, which we're doing here at this point, which is supposed to be completed by the end of the month, he would get paid. Now, what happened, I heard part of the conversation, I had to go off and on, when at that time it was a heavy snowfall and somebody walks off in the middle of the job, you got to replace it immediately. Now, we budgeted at the mine, Jack, all the way along, and because of heavy snow, we weren't able to get the concentrates out. But, you know, we put $50 million into that mine and looking to put another $17 million in there. And it's all not only for the staff, but the employees and everything at that mine.
But mind you, you haven't paid the severance pay to the union workers yet.
There's a 13-week now, Jack, when somebody's laid off, whatever, you know, on these things when it's due and payable. But these things will be paid and brought up to date.
But you're financing, but you paid those who stuck it out without pay, but you didn't pay Bob and the other couple of guys. That wasn't fair, was it?
That was not done with me. It was done through the mine.
Well, can you give Bob an advance on his $10,000?
Well, as I understand it from the mine, Jack, on it, when they walked off, they had to replace them. Now, a mine is budgeted, and we were on a very close budget, as you realize there.
Oh, no, I know. And look, we know it's a good mine. We want to see the stock go to $60 again. But it doesn't seem fair to me that you can ask men to work without pay to keep the mine from becoming inoperable.
No, but they forget to say, Jack, for the weeks we were closed down, we had environmental problems. We paid every man directly whether they worked or they didn't work.
Did they, Bob?
Yes, we were still on the job and still performed our duties.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you should...
Nothing, Bob, and everybody should be paid that. But when you budget something, and all mines today in, I would say, North America, is having a certain amount of problems.
Can you make money at $300 an ounce for gold?
Yes, we just finished the McKay-Stallman report out of London, just finished the report, which was a 6-week report, and this was based on our financing getting approved, and they showed where the mine could make good money.
Can I talk to you?
Yeah, Bob's got a question for you.
Mr. Gillespie, I think perhaps the method used was wrong.
Well, I'm not...
If you had approached me, for example, in a completely different manner, rather than the strong-arm tactics that were used, I may have reconsidered and may have still been on the job yet.
Well,
but when someone tells me that I have to continue to work without any wages or else, then that's unacceptable to me.
Well, the conversation I got from the mine, Bob, is that you were a good man and everybody liked you on it. And but what happened during that day, as I understand it, is that you left in the middle of the day and it was snowing like hell. And from that, they had to have another man on site immediately.
Hey, if somebody came down from BCTV and said to me today, hey, Jack, you're going to be working for nothing, and I'm already behind God knows how much money, I would find it very difficult to stay on the job.
Well, that is easy to say, Jack, but I can only give the opinion from the company.
Anyway, no, I don't want to get involved in that. You are in the middle of refinancing now, and you have a successful, what, 12 million refinancing coming up?
17 million altogether, Jack.
17 million coming up, right? And when the weather clears and you get your refinancing, will you go back into operation rehiring all your crews?
And even maybe more, Jack.
And even maybe more. At that time then, why can't you pay Bob now some of the financing you've probably already obtained? I mean, it's not fair.
Well, we've got $2 million sitting in the lawyer's trust account with this money coming in each day. Now, there's a certain set of rules you got to go by before you can release that money.
Yeah, but if the employment standards were doing their job, they could walk into Carolin Mines today, seize equipment, sell it, and pay.
Well, that's possible, but for...
That's in the books.
For $10,000 or $12,000, Jack, we've been going through this hurdle for some time. As I told you, we put $50 million in that and putting a lot more money into it.
Oh, as I'd say, I know guys that have made hundreds of thousands of dollars. They certainly wouldn't contribute to Bob's wages, although they should.
Well, you know, when I consider his staff, is that they're 12 months a year. And they would,
only if you pay them, Orville.
Well, if you don't have the money, you have a hell of a job paying them, Jack.
You don't tell me that I'm going to say, come to British Columbia, working as staff on a mine, and if we run out of money, you work for free until we refinance. Now, all I want from you, Orville, is an assurance that as soon as you can, you'll pay Bob Naismyth and how many other guys?
4 others.
4 other guys who didn't stay on to work for free.
All right, Jack, there was a little bit of a misquote there. There was 2 of the guys did get paid. There was just 3 that didn't, as I understand.
All right, well, the 3, but...
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with me here at the mine.
When do you think Bob will get paid then?
By the end of the month.
By the end of January?
Yes.
Great stuff.
That's good.
Let me know when you pay him, and then I'll give you a good plug for your gold mine on the air. And I hope the stock goes back to $60. And I know it's a working proposition. You're one of the best gold mines, you and Scotty. I've got the 2 good gold mines in British Columbia, and for God's sake, try and raise the money for Bob, will you?
Yeah, I can tell you one thing.
What?
Every time a guy like me gets to talk to a guy like you is when we have these hurdles.
Only in troubles.
Yes.
Much obliged. You want to say a last word?
No, I'd just like to say that it's not only the money in my case. I made a stand whereby I refused to work under these conditions, and apart from the money, I'm at the age now that I'm going to find it probably very difficult to find an equivalent job, especially with the condition of the mining industry. So not only am I minus money, I have my career in the mining is probably finished, and I will probably have to look for another work. So if there's anybody out there got a job for me, give me a call.
Don't blame me. I have a strong suspicion that you would get rehired up there.
Well, there'd be certain conditions to me going back to.
Yeah, for your own conditions. See, what aggravates me about this is that we've got complicated legislation on the employment standards which is supposed to protect the wages of the working man.
Yes, but when you have an investigator saying to you, well, you can't get blood out of a stone, and we don't want to start a domino effect. In my opinion, he's more concerned about the company than he is me getting my wages for him.
The employment standards guy should be saying that to the Carolin gold mines and saying, hey, get the money up to pay these wages, or we will start a domino effect and somebody will pick up Carolin Mines for a nickel on the dollar.
Well, I've been led to believe that the employment standards have a very poor track record in recovering wages.
So have I, but they shouldn't have. I think that a man's wages should be the first charge regardless, and if they can raise $12 million, they can raise 60,000 for the 3, 4, or 5 guys who need the money. I'm grateful to you for coming and putting it on the air this morning.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jack.
And you'll let me know by the end of the month when you get your check.
I sure will give you a call.
If you get your check. Yeah. And there's a good electrical superintendent looking for a job, perhaps, if he doesn't go back to Carolin. Next, we're going to look at the fishing industry, sport fishing in BC after the break. After many and considerable complications, it looks as if Canada and the United States will finally ratify a salmon treaty for the West Coast, something that's been almost as elusive as salmon when I go out fishing. And predictions are being made that if ratified, this salmon treaty will absolutely shatter sport fishing and the massive industry behind it in British Columbia, the seawaters of British Columbia. So I was elected to this by my colleague Al Davidson, who's somewhat outspoken on occasions. And so this morning I asked Dan Sewell of Sewell's Marina in West Vancouver and Rolf Paterson of Daiwa, the big Japanese fishing sports equipment outfit.
Correct, sir.
to come and give me their side of the story. Because I know, Dan and Rolf, that when I go to the trawlers and the Union and the Indians, that the story will split into 1,000 pieces and people will say you're wrong. Make the case for me, if it's correct, that the new U.S.-Canada Sports Treaty is going to kick the hell out of our sports fishing industry.
The treaty is one that Canada needs. It's a treaty that we've been working on for, Canada's been working on for a lot of years. But what we've done here is we've basically taken and sold the sport industry down the river. The sport industry is going to end up, or have to end up, with regulations whereby we're only going to have 1 Chinook perhaps a day, perhaps 5 Chinook a year as a ceiling, and probably winter closures. As the treaty progresses and there's a more abundance of fish hopefully out there, the restrictions are going to get greater and greater because the ceiling is going to stay in effect.
Do you endorse this interpretation?
I think that's a correct interpretation, Jack.
Well, how can they do such a thing?
Well, they put a maximum ceiling on the Chinook allowance for sport fishermen in the Gulf of Georgia. I mean, it was a negotiated number, and now if the treaty goes through in its present form, the Canadian government and the Canadian administrators are bound to keep that treaty.
Is this the first time we've had a treaty on the West Coast that might be? What will it give to the Americans? Why is it going to be as tough as this? I know that the fish stocks are way down.
Let's put it in a proper perspective, Jack. What the treaty has done is broken the coast up into 3 sections. We've got the west coast of Vancouver Island, we've got the north coast, and we've got the south coast. Now, everyone, including the sport fishermen, realizes that the Chinook stocks are in jeopardy. And everyone, including the sport fishermen, want to see the sport stocks, or the Chinook stocks rather, looked after. So there's no question about that one. What the treaty has done is placed a ceiling of 275,000 pieces in the Gulf. Now, the Gulf is not the true Gulf of Georgia. It starts in Juan de Fuca and runs all the way through to Johnson Strait. So there's 275,000 pieces available in the Gulf for the troll fishery, the commercial fishery, and the sport fishery. Last year, the sport fishery caught 360,000 Chinooks. The troll industry caught approximately 100,000. Now, let's look at the scenario that, or let's look first of all at what the treaty did. The treaty gave the commercial sector an extra 6% of the sockeyes on the Fraser.
Right.
The U.S. historically over the last years has been taking 33% of the sockeye on the Fraser. Now they're going to take 27%. That translates into 1.5 million extra sockeye for the commercial sector.
In BC?
In BC.
From the Fraser Run.
From the Fraser Run.
Yeah.
Right. The commercial sector get an extra 1.75 million.
Right.
The Americans are getting less on the Fraser Run of sockeye.
Right. And as the Fraser's enhanced, our commercial sector will get more of those sockeye. It's a good deal for Canada. Now, in the Chinook fishery, and bear in mind there's 5 species of salmon, so we're only talking the one. In the Chinook fishery, the commercial sector, through the incidental catch, which is the ones that are caught by accident in the nets when they're targeting on sockeye, they'll catch some Chinook by accident. There have been reports that have been done by biologists or by individuals that show the incidental catch is greater than the sport catch in total. The reports have also shown that the incidental catch is 100% killed.
Is it marketed?
In some cases, I assume the ones that would fall into the boat would be, but the ones that are thrown overboard
the
wouldn't be.
shakers are away.
Sure, gone.
Well, the other thing is that in Alaska and perhaps in BC, Chinook under 5 pounds are not counted as Chinook.
Oh, I see. Now let me get that. You made in what we now call the Gulf, but that's from Juan de Fuca up to Johnson Straits. Last year, there was a total of nearly 500,000 fish caught by 360,000 by sports fishermen, 100,000 by trawlers.
Right.
And the whole quota for this year is 275,000.
By the treaty.
Is that sport fishermen only?
No.
That's troll and sport.
That's a Chinook ceiling.
That's a Chinook ceiling. So therefore the trawlers will pick up 100,000 and there'll only be half the amount for sport fishermen.
What you're going to end up with is a dogfight between the trollers and the sport fishermen, and the sport fishermen don't think that the trollers are a bunch of bad guys.
It's another fact that you wanted the trollers out of that area altogether and leave that Gulf for sport fishing, for Chinook.
80 to 90% of the sport fishing effort takes place in the Gulf. So when we look at the cost-benefit ratio of the sport fishery, when we look at the importance to tourism, you have to say that the best utilization of the Gulf as a resource is as a recreational
Give me an
reserve.
idea of the size of the sport fishing industry.
Sport fishing industry has a direct benefit of $36 million and an indirect benefit of about 118 or 120 million. So it's about a $150 million industry.
That's per year.
That's not an exaggeration.
No, and
That's marinas, equipment, rods, boats, food, gas.
But your capital expenditures are even on top of that.
Well, what
Jack,
have we got a West Coast Fisheries Minister?
Oh, we thought we had.
What's his name again?
John Fraser.
John Fraser. Have you spoken to John about this?
It's been difficult to get through to John.
Well, with the opening of the House yesterday and cabinet meetings and BC caucus meetings, it's
And
very difficult.
So these gentlemen are telling me that if the treaty is ratified, we're talking about the Chinook fishery. Is that the major sport fishery in the Gulf, in our Gulf?
The Chinook and the coho.
What about the coho? Is that a different figure?
That one hasn't been established as yet, but there's an annex within the treaty that indicates that it's going to come the same route.
The Chinook fishery for sportsmen is going to be devastated, and the loss to tourism could be as much as 60 or 70 or 100 million a year.
Well, Jack, at Westport, when they put in fish regulations of this sort, their economy, which was about about $45 million per annum economy, went from 45 to 7.
Where is Westport?
Oregon.
Okay, your calls to Dan Sewell, Tom's son, right?
Right.
And Rolf Paterson of Daiwa after the break. This is one side of the fishing story, but it sounds clean and crisp at the moment, that the new treaty with the United States to be ratified by Joe Clark, I think, and whoever it is on the other side, is going to demolish, these gentlemen tell me, the sport fishing industry, which is adhered to by 400,000 saltwater sport fishermen who pay $5 a piece a license for the season, don't they?
That's correct.
For the year. Yeah. And the catch of Chinook will be down from $460,000 to $275,000, of which the sports fishermen will only get half of that, maybe, right?
Possibly.
Possibly half of that. And give me again the position of Fraser. Is Fraser in favour of sports fishing, or does he know that this has been wiped out by this potential treaty?
Well, John Fraser has, both before he was elected and since he's elected, come out strongly in favour of sport fishing and the contribution of the sport fishing to the economy of the province of BC.
Oh, who agrees with you on your interpretation of it? What about the Pacific Salmon Society? Do they agree with you?
They're very concerned about it.
What about the trawlers? What about the union, UFAWU? What do they say?
Well, Jack,
I'll ask them, but do you happen to know?
I think it's a good treaty for them in as much as they got 1.5 million sockeye back from the Fraser River run, and they're going to get a few less Chinook, but there's trade-offs available from replacing the loss in Chinook with the sockeye.
Your fear is that it will wipe out your commercial fishing, sports fishing industry, in which you're both major participants on the coast.
That's
absolutely
definite, and I think part of the sad part of it is that the treaty negotiations, or what took place, could have been set up in such a way that this did not happen.
Go ahead, please. Hello. Oh, you're going to go in there. Where am I going? Galliano Island. Go ahead from Galliano.
Yeah, Jack.
Yeah.
Speaking.
Yeah, go on.
Yes, I'd like to ask these people how... Yes, I'd like...
Turn down your television sound. Now speak up.
I'd like to ask these gentlemen how someone from... I'd like to ask these gentlemen how someone from Daiwa Canada Limited can possibly have any interjection into a U.S.-Canada federal treaty that is being put in place for the conservation of the fish, not the conservation of big business in British Columbia.
Well, that's a kind of silly question, actually. He sells equipment, he makes money at it. Tommy Sewell rents boats. There is a vast sport fishing industry of which he is entitled to speak up freely. I'd rather you challenge them on their interpretation of the treaty.
Well, I believe they're interpreting the treaty improperly, because what that treaty has been put in effect for, Jack, was to ensure that whatever fish and whatever enhancement was put forward by the federal governments from both countries, that the people from that country will be guaranteed the harvesting of that resource. In other words, unless a treaty like this goes in, there will be no expenditure by the federal government on either country's behalf in dollars and cents to create more fish.
Let me ask you a question. Is it correct that there'll be much fewer Chinook available for sport fishermen?
Depends on how much money the sports fishermen and the province and both countries are willing to spend on enhancement in this country.
Tommy, Dan?
Let's look at a couple of facts first of all. And we're all very cognizant of the Chinook fishery and where it's going and what's happening, but the various sport fishing bodies are all putting money into restocking the rivers. I don't see the commercial sector doing that. There is money being spent by almost every interested group on river enhancement. If the commercial fishing interests were really serious about the Chinook, 66% of the 4-year-old Chinooks by DFO's, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, tagging process are caught north of the Gulf. 75% of the 5-year-old Chinook, once again by DFO's numbers, are caught north of the Gulf. Those are the spawning fish coming home. Why is there not restrictions on those fish in the north? Because those are the ones we want. Why is there not restrictions on the shakers and the incidental catch? Why is the commercial sector getting 1.5 million extra sockeye? Everything is weighted.
I've got a why too. What about the Indians who've nowadays got the rights to fish anywhere where the river touches the reservation lands? I'm thinking of Squamish, Lillooet, the Fraser, the Capilano. Remember those dreadful scenes at the Capilano last year when the fish going up were all being hooked out by the Indian bands, which didn't seem right to me. Did it seem right to you?
Well,
or is nobody prepared to talk about that?
Nobody's prepared to talk about that, and that hasn't been brought up. The incidental catch doesn't exist, and the Indian catch doesn't exist.
Well, that's crazy. Anyway, thanks for your contribution. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack. I'm a member of the Fishermen's Union and very concerned about the salmon enhancement program. I have some pretty strong feelings on it in regards to the strength and population of the fishing industry, the fishermen and related facilities.
What do you think of these guys' complaints about the sport fishing?
I would like to eliminate sports fishermen in BC. We were once the largest industry in this province.
You fished it out, though?
We fished it out through a lot of stupidity through our Department of Fisheries, federal.
200,000 tons of herring was not uncommon.
Knocking it, I am saying our own greed, but the status, the way it is today, we have to have a better control on the native fishery. We have to have a stricter, more stringent control on the sports fishermen. We are 20,000 strong. We still earn our basic income from fish. And without this, where are we? Should we be added to the unemployment rolls that Canada already has that are astronomical?
Well, just a minute. What about the $150 million sports fishing industry, Tommy? He just wants to wipe you out.
Yeah,
well, there's 300,000 sport fishermen. He's talking about 20,000 commercial fishermen.
$1 million commercial industry now.
There's a multi-million-dollar sport industry.
Yeah,
and the sport industry is only taking 4 to 5% of the fish. You're taking over 18 million fish. We're taking less than 1 million. You're a welfare giant. You have tax incentives on your boats, tax incentives on your fuel. We don't have any tax incentives.
Unemployment insurance in the winter?
I didn't say that. You did.
Well, no, you people are making us sound like we are greedy. We are trying, in our damnedest way, to put a quota on our fleet. I'm aware right
Yeah, but it was silly of you to say wipe out the sport industry. You know damn fine that can't be done. It's totally politically unacceptable.
And the sport industry wanting to take over the Gulf and stop the commercial fishing there has been going on since before you or I were born, Jack.
I know, but it wasn't me. It was the packing companies and the fishermen who, if given the opportunity, they'd take every fish out of the Gulf tomorrow if they thought they'd get away with it. You know that.
I believe in conservation myself, and I believe I have a majority of the membership that also believes in that.
Yeah, we always run. Never mind, we won't get into that. I'm grateful for your call. I'll do one more section of calls after the break. Well, this treaty about which the commercial fishing interests, no, the sports fishing interests are very concerned, is now fully and finally drafted between the United States and Canada, is it?
It's been initialed, which means that in Canada it goes through to Cabinet or to Joe Clark or whomever. Stateside, it has to be ratified through the Senate.
Now, do you suggest that there should be radical changes in the entire treaty?
No, Jack, we don't believe that there need to be radical changes to the treaty. What we believe is there has to be a language change, eliminating the 275,000 Chinook ceiling for the Gulf and bringing the total Chinook management back within the boundaries of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and under Mr. Fraser's department. He's responsible for the
At the
allocation.
moment, the administration of this has been given away in an international treaty, is that right?
That's correct. All your domestic stocks are being administered internationally instead of being done on the home front.
That's the point I wanted to get. So where does the buck stop now?
The buck stops with Mr. Fraser, Jack.
John Fraser?
Yes, sir.
Has he been tackled straight up on this sport fishing thing yet?
I believe he has, sir.
And what has he said?
It's tough.
It's tough. Well, we'll have a bash at him too if we can. Mind you, as you know, the only Tory cabinet minister I've seen is Carney. And I've got Mazankowski coming tomorrow, but he doesn't know anything about fishing.
He's a member of the cabinet.
Yeah, but fish don't travel on trains. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Jack.
Morning.
I wonder if your guest would comment on how the Bolt decision in Washington has affected the international treaty and Canada's share of the fish. I'll hang up and listen, please, Jack.
The Bolt decision was a treaty which gave the Indians unlimited rights for fishing, as I recall. Half of all the fish caught in Washington waters.
I believe so.
How much has that affected the treaty? Do you know?
Well, I don't think it's affected the treaty at all. It has complicated the amending legislation on behalf of the U.S. people, but that's their problem. They'll look after that.
Yeah, that is their problem. I would agree. Go ahead, please.
The picture is even darker than your portrayal on there. The commercial fishery probably gives to the citizens of Canada less than anything. They pay no sales tax, either provincially or federally. All their tie-up dogs are government dogs paid for by taxpayers but utilized without charge by fishermen. All their supplies and groceries are bought at wholesale level through their own fishing stores. And then when they're not fishing, they're drawing unemployment insurance. They're just a take-all industry that gives nothing in return.
Well, I think that's quite a good little summary. I'll throw that at some of the packing companies, maybe at the Fishermen's Union too. Much obliged. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack, I just wanted to ask one question to your guest about the sports fishing. Who controls the take out of the waters? I realize, too, that the commercial fisheries have long exploited BC, especially their fish resources, but I wanted to know who imposes controls over the sports fishermen, because many a time you go out fishing and there's a lot of fishermen with a lot of illegal fish in their boats, and nobody's doing anything about it. I was just wondering, how can you call the commercial fisheries, big giants that are just exploiting everything, and you're only taking 1 million fish? Well, if you look at it on a smaller scale, 1 million fish, it might be just 1 million compared to 30 million, 50 million, but it still is 1 million more fish. Who's going to impose controls on you when you want to take 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million?
Okay, Dan?
Let's putting it in proper perspective. Of the 300,000 licenses that were sold last year to the sport industry, 13,000, or 13% rather, did not even go fishing. 40% did not catch a fish. So what you're talking about is a relatively small minority. There is a policing problem, whether it be on the streets or where it is. The other thing to put into perspective is that last year we went from a 12-year license to a 15-month license in order to move from a calendar year to a fiscal year. At the end of the calendar year, if you had filled up your 30 coupons on the Chinook catch, you could write Department of Fisheries and Oceans and get an extra 10 coupons. No one of the 300,000 people wrote in. They didn't need it. We're not, in the sport industry, we're not selling fish so much as we're selling the dream or the expectation to go fishing. If you and I go out and our limit's 4, we go out with the dream that we're going to catch 4. Within 15 minutes of being out there, the dream is fading and we're just enjoying nature. most fishermen are not catching fish.
Sir, can I, at the risk of being a smart-ass, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
You know, last year that I didn't catch 150 fish myself, not saying that I'm a criminal, but how do you know that I didn't catch 150 fish and the people I went out with caught 150 fish and we never wrote for a coupon and we lied? That's what I'm trying to say. How do you know we didn't exploit? How do you can't say 14% didn't catch a fish because 14% could have lied. What I'm saying is there a way to truly enforce and make those statistics truly reliable? Is there a way that you propose that you can say, okay, well, they won't catch more than 1 million fish because this resource has to be conserved. It has to be split between the commercial fisheries.
Okay,
and yes,
okay.
there should be sport fishing, but it has to be policed well.
The only way it can be policed is by inspection by fisheries officer, is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you see much of that at all?
Limited.
Limited. Gentlemen, I'm very grateful for you coming in this morning. You've alerted me, along with my buddy Davidson, to the fact that I've been ignoring a major story. And the position of the sports fishing industry, as represented by Dan and Rolf Paterson of Daiwa, is that there's dangers of $150 million income to British Columbia being seriously affected if the domestic control of fishing stocks is not put back in British Columbia waters. Am I right?
Right.
My thanks to these gentlemen. Next, I'm going to do a couple of letters before they get too old to use, after the break. If I got to go to are you sure you've got the right goddamn date?
Oh, bro. Yeah, we are. Hit the kill switch.
My apologies. My sincere apologies. That was a fault of Schneider. Doesn't that look disgusting? Doesn't that look repulsive? Am I not a stinker? Let's put up the first letter. Webster, you weak-minded slob, quit smoking. Do you think we want to listen to you wheeze and cough with your bronchitis and emphysema? Your only redeeming feature is your kindness to children and to the down and out. You delight in browbeating everyone else. Your wife and kids must hate your guts if that's the way you've treated them the past 40 years. Rude, crude, arrogant, and bombastic. Thank you very much, Mr. Wooden in Fort Langley. You've obviously been reading my private mail. But on the other hand, you see, here is a letter from no address on it. Dear Jack, I really value your interviews with Mike Pence, Eugene Carroll, Helen Caldecott, Mike Wallace. My husband and I are just visiting from England and are full of admiration for what you've been doing, gradually peeling the onion, so to speak. In England, it is impossible, except on very local radio, to get anything like this quantity and quality of teasing out of the subject. Thank you for contributing to the growing enlightenment of people in our threatened world. Jen Turner. That's a good letter. Now I'll try the next one. Webster, no dear in the salutation, because at the moment I am not very endeared towards your reaction to Mayor Harcourt's refusal to let you know how he would vote in York or Owen. I agree with the Mayor. First, it is supposed to be done by secret ballot, and second, it is none of your bloody business. Please announce on the air that if you did have the vote, how would you vote? W.P. Bobbitt, what a wonderful name, Penticton. I'm glad you asked me that question, and if I were Mayor Harcourt, I would hesitate to endorse anyone whatsoever. I would weasel and climb on both sides of the fence, but I would indicate by my attitude that I favoured York, if I were Mayor Harcourt. And I would say if I were Harcourt, well, of course, there's no need for an election. There's no need for this legal action. We had a democratic election and whatnot and whatnot. So therefore, my position is that I would say that York's attitude has infuriated me intensely all through the campaign, and that if you pushed me to it, not because I love Owen, but because I'm not that keen on York, and I'd like to see Harcourt on a spot with a divided council with another NPA member on it. So you may deduce from that how I would have voted. How much time to go? Oh, I'm still embarrassed. It was your fault too, Fred. You didn't tell me I was on the air. You were standing there gossiping, Schneider. Once in a lifetime, I miss a red light. You've got to keep me on the ball. What do you think you're paid for? Dear Webster, have I time for this? I look quite good this morning. I was going to get a facelift, and my wife said that if I do that, she'll divorce me. You ready? Put up a letter. A letter! Repat Carney, have you forgotten the purpose of your program? These people are your guests, and they're usually invited to state their views to the listeners. What is happening is the survival of the fittest, and unfortunately all we hear are your opinions, good or bad. No one should be put down, shouted at, or treated like idiots because they do not agree with you or sit on your side of the fence. That's a very nice phrase there. That should sincerely use. I don't know who did that. I'll do a Tafku. Tafku. Why don't supermarkets put boxes in the stores so people can give to food banks? Where have you been? There are boxes in all of the major supermarkets for the food bank. Woodward, Safeway, and SuperValue all tell us it is their store-wide policy for boxes in their stores, and they are on the outside of the checkout stands. Outside of the checkout stands. And SuperValue tells us they have a policy of giving people special rates on case lots that are contributed to the food bank. There are, and you should put stuff in for the food banks if you can afford it. Next one. Might just make it. Why would the number 112-800-268-6364 be used on television for ordering chairs, and next day the same number to help starving children? Is this a scam? I saw that and I wondered about it, but it's not a scam. The number you mentioned belongs to National Data Corporation of Canada. They provide networking on the 800 number for many companies. They are a long-distance answering service. They act as a clearinghouse for calls to their clients. So you could see that number up for ordering records or tapes or information packages or a plea to sponsor a needy child. We had no names on the That's a Fair questions today. I like to see names where we've got names that we can put on them. Sorry about that, the beginning of this segment. I'll be back after the break. Tomorrow we're going to interview Don Macinkowski, the Conservative member of Cabinet who is the Minister of Transport, who's going to put back all kinds of trains on Via, regardless of expense, I gather. Funny decision. Via Rail. Should be interesting. And we might take a wander into the Kalahari Desert tomorrow morning with a couple from there, Mark and Delia Owens. Main target, Macinkowski. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. precisely.